Welcome to the Straight Talk on Fleet podcast with Aaron Gilchrist. Each week, Aaron will be breaking down fleet management, trying to cut through the noise and get down to the real issues safety and operations leaders are struggling with every day. The goal will be to get to the bottom of how leaders can break down these silos of information and accelerate change management, how to use real-time, accurate data to drive massive efficiencies across fleet-focused business processes, and to elevate people's careers with emerging best practices. Now it's time for the Straight Talk on Fleet.
We are back for, let's see, this is episode 66, which is crazy, of the Straight Talk on Fleet. I am Aaron Gilchrist, your host here. I serve as the VP of Fleet Evangelism, don't laugh, at IntelliShift. I get to do that because I'm a longtime fleet director. I have a passion for, as many of you know, safety, efficiency, sustainability, and I just aim to bring my experience here to generate conversation and community and help people like me, other fleet leaders and safety and operations leaders elevate their career. So that's what we're doing here on Straight Talk on Fleet. And I'm super excited today to introduce our guest, Josh. Josh, welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I'm looking forward to this conversation and have been for weeks.
Me too. So Josh serves as the CEO at Windy City Equipment Services, but he's also an author, a speaker. He's a coach, which I'm excited to hear a little bit more about. And he's the host of Everything They Don't Tell You podcast. So Josh, let's just start with the basics. Tell us who you are, what WCE does, maybe how you're doing things a little bit differently. And then what I'd love to hear about is sort of what keeps you fired up with everything that you're juggling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a lot in one. I'll do my best, Aaron.
Sure.
My name is Josh Zolin. I'm the CEO of Windy City Equipment Service. We are commercial HVAC, refrigeration, and kitchen equipment repair vendor provider. Also doing install and preventative maintenance and that kind of stuff. Currently operating in 3 branches: Phoenix, Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, and Houston, Texas. I've been doing this now for about, what year is it? I want to say about 17
2025,
years.
my friend.
Yeah, it's 16 or 17 years now. And did not start as the CEO. Obviously, I started as a technician running calls in the field, actually fixing the equipment. So I am from the roots of a mechanic, and that's kind of how I applied my problem solving to running and growing a business.
Awesome.
We've always done things a little bit differently. I'll be transparent. When I came on to the business, I was in my early 20s. I had a younger mindset, especially compared to a lot of the other companies in this industry, and that put us in an advantage from a technical standpoint, right? I was always looking at the next technology to implement, the next technology to leverage, and how we can serve our customers better, how we can take care of our team better, all by intertwining our tech stack, if you will. So now finally we're in a day and age where that's starting to catch up. So I don't know how
Yeah.
much longer it's going to be a differentiator for us, but a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline with AI and stuff like that. I don't know if we'll have time to tackle that beast today.
Next time.
Yeah, next time for sure. But honestly, Aaron, what helps me keep the passion for what I do is the people that I serve. I have a strong burning desire to help others succeed, right? And to take any and all experiences that I've had, both good and bad, and be able to put others or help others put themselves in situations where they can use that knowledge as a stepping stone to their success. Whether that's my customers, whether that's my employees, whether that's my family, or whether that's, just anybody off the street who sends me a LinkedIn message asking to grab coffee.
Love it. It's like a pay it forward mentality from what I can kind of gather,
I try.
I love it. That's kind of what we do here on this podcast, because I feel like, I've grown up in this industry and so many people have helped me get where I am today. And I love to be able to share that knowledge and have great guests on who can do the same. So for our listeners, I mean, in this episode, we're gonna hear Josh's perspectives, which are going to be great. a little bit about how today's service leaders, I'll use the term modernize blue collar operations, but it's for the purpose of improving things like culture, which is the most important thing in my mind, but certainly performance and growth. Everybody wants to be successful, but it's the how you do it that really matters. And that's what I'm excited to talk to you about today, Josh. Also, just, you're not here because you have a podcast or because WCE is a customer of IntelliShift, and thank you for your business. We're so grateful for that. But because you're a fellow influencer who really cares about being successful, but doing it the right way. So that's what we're going to get into today. And so I know that anybody listening, no matter what you do, you'll have some takeaways for sure. Kind of doing things better, different. Know better, do better is what I like to say. So
Putting a lot of pressure on me, Aaron. I don't know if I can live
no
up.
worries. Trust me. Our audience is awesome. They are all working really hard to do what we're doing, influence people, make better decisions as leaders. So, helping the next guy, or gal do a better job. So let's start with this topic of operational transparency. And when I think about that as a fleet leader, that was me going out in the field on a consistent basis and really understanding the job that our technicians did, trying to help them understand that their job as a technician also had to be coupled with their job as a professional driver, which was really hard to kind of put the pieces together on. But from your perspective, how does that transparency improve the performance in field service specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question, Aaron. I appreciate the thoughtfulness behind it. And I think it's also a loaded question. There's a lot of different answers, a lot of different ins and outs. So first of all, I think that when you say a technician needs to be a professional, mechanic as well as a professional driver, we'd be remiss if we didn't say they also had to be a professional relationship builder, a professional therapist if they're in a leadership position,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot, parts procurement, estimator. Okay, I'll stop. But
it's
but listen,
it's not untrue. It's a lot of hats
there's
to be wearing.
there's so much that goes into it, right? And the only way, you said it best, the only way to understand what actually goes into it is to walk a mile in their shoes, right? To actually go out into the field and see what they're up against every day. We talk about technology, and this technology helps to drive transparency, but it can also be a little bit of a culture shock to some of these technicians as well. So,
Big time.
we talk about fleet, right? Fleet for a technician is largely set it and forget it, except for, hey, we're going to monitor what you do as far as,
Mhm.
speeding and tight corners and stuff like that. However, they're up against other procedures as well, such as CMMS providers, IVR check-ins, checkouts, customer expectations, things like
Yeah.
that. So when we talk about transparency at that level, if we can get not only the dispatchers, the admin personnel to understand what's involved in that, but also the technicians and vice versa, then we really create an atmosphere where everybody's rowing in the same direction. And that's
Mhm.
easier said than done,
Oh yeah.
right? But I mean, this comes with regular meetings, both for the office, for the field, for both leadership, install, PM, service, whatever divisions or profit centers you have in your company. I know that meetings are expensive, but you can't put a price on getting everybody on the same page and
Oh,
cascading this transparency throughout the organization. Does that
I
answer your
couldn't agree
question?
more. Oh, it does. I mean,
Okay.
it really highlights the importance of it as well. I think, something I used to do is, I hate the word supplier, but for today's purpose, I'll say supplier. I think of them as more like partners, or at least they should be. I had this big network of suppliers, and I'd have them go and do ride alongs with my drivers when I was running my fleet so that they could come back and talk to me about and really be thoughtful about how our relationship was going and what they could do to help the drivers be maybe safer, more efficient, um, and increase their understanding of field ops. And that simple thing just paid dividends. I can't tell you how excited it got my partners to come back and say, gosh, wow, we didn't know. And then the list was long about things they didn't really know that they could do to help make that environment a better place. And whether that's in the cab of the vehicle, or whether it's part of the upfitting process, or whether it's whatever tech they're using to communicate with the customer. If we don't know what they do, we can't make their life easier and better and safer and more efficient, and all the things that ultimately helps businesses make money, right?
Correct.
You talked about technology. It is tough. But transparency and communication helps these technology rollouts go better, right? If everybody understands, why you're doing them. What are you guys doing as it relates to new tech or new tools to help build like driver adoption and get that buy-in from that end user who ultimately has to be the one who either is stoked about it or is going to fight you tooth and nail every step of the way. So how are you guys doing with communication and using that transparency model to get your drivers to speak up about what's going great, what's not, and really adopt that technology that you need?
Yeah, good question. I'm glad you asked. So, two very specific things, with them and ownership, and I'll explain what those are. So,
I
with
love
them
it.
is an acronym for what's in it for me,
Yes.
right? You have to bridge the gap between what it is that you're implementing and why it is you're implementing it, but that why needs to include what it's going to do for who you're asking to adopt it.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is very important. You have to be very clear, right? Because if you leave any room for ambiguity or confusion, then people will start to come to their own conclusions. They'll make their own assumptions. And if they're not in line with why you actually did it, then it's gonna be hard for them to want to adopt it.
Yeah. 100%.
The ownership part, and this is something that we've been doing now for quite some time, and we found it wildly valuable. I should change that. If you want a fun buzzword, let's call it camp syndrome. Okay, so
Yeah.
so camp syndrome is when you tell somebody something until you're blue in the face and they don't hear you, right? This how often happens with kids. And then you send them to camp. Somebody else tells them the exact same thing, and they come back all excited. And they're like, guess what I learned? The same thing
Story
happens
of
in
my life
business,
as a mom.
right? So you know exactly what I'm talking
I
about.
do.
And the same thing happens in business. Any business leaders out there know exactly what I'm talking about. You can drive home a point again and again and again, and it doesn't seem to land. But if that point comes from anybody else, anywhere else, it has a better opportunity of landing with that person. So tying this all back together,
Yeah.
what we've done is we've created almost committees or communities within our organization that allow a certain subset of team members. In this case, when we talk about adoption, let's call it our tech team, right? So
Mhm.
we get 3 or 4 of our technicians who we know are stoked about new technology, and they just have that trigger in them, right? And they love
Mhm.
to play with it, they love to poke holes in it, they love to evolve it, right? So we deploy whatever it is that we're trying to get adopted to them, let them manipulate it, let them get comfortable with it, let them understand and see the value in it, and then let them become the advocates to the rest of the company. So it's not coming from me, it's coming from their peers as
Makes
to why
perfect
it's so
sense.
important that we adopt and we implement the technology at hand. Those two things have completely transformed the way that technology is adopted in our organization.
I love it. And I can't wait to even use what I'm learning from you today to even better help our customers. Because one thing that I get to do at IntelliShift is I get to use my experience and knowledge to help them create better communication strategies, adoption strategies, and even write policy and all kinds of fun things that I got to do for many years. It seemed a little bit less fun then, but now it's like I call it. You talk about camp syndrome. For me, it's like I'm a grandma, right? Like grandparents get to give the kids back at the end of the night, so I kind of get to be a fleet manager without a fleet, right?
There you
I
go.
get to help a lot of people, and then they take it the next level, and then I sleep better at night. I love it. Great tidbits there. So talking about technology and adoption, I mean, technology drives a massive amount of data. And I think when I talk to my fleet manager peers in operations, to this overwhelming feeling of we have so much data. We need to get it consolidated, and we need to get it in a place where it tells stories and it's actionable. So, talk a little bit about um, how you're using sort of data driven decision makings to scale your operation, or whatever it's helping you do. I know scaling your service operation is one thing, but data driven decision making helps in all kinds of business areas and business unit and business function. So, talk about how that's working for you, what you're doing with all the
Yeah,
data.
no, I appreciate that. And my COO says it the best, right? Whenever we talk about data and KPIs and graphs and statistics and reports and all this stuff, he has two magic words. So what?
What's
And
it
what
telling
he's
you? What's it
right.
telling us?
And what he's saying is what can we actually do with this? How is this actionable to us? And so, it's led us to an important distinction, right, between leading metrics and lagging metrics. And for those who don't know the difference, lagging metrics are things that happened in the past. You have no influence over them. You can see trends, so you can hopefully
Mhm.
change that in the future, but you can't really change them. Leading metrics are exactly the opposite. They are what lead to the trends that you want to see. So a lagging metric might be profitability or revenue. You don't have a crystal ball. You can't see into the future, but you can do things to drive that, right? You can track how many times you picked up the phone to call a client. You can track, how many times you followed up on a work order to ensure quality service. You can track, all of these things that lead to the results that you want. And so
Mhm.
that's really where we've attempted to focus our efforts, is to what are the statistics, KPIs, and drivers to really drive the results that we want to see in the organization. Because the traditional revenue, profit, margin, that kind of stuff is great for visibility, and for reporting, but it's not super actionable for your team at that department
Mhm.
level. So, I mean, I could get into specifics all day long about, especially when it comes to, fleet. I've got
Sure.
my fleet manager looking at hard corners and hard stops and fast accelerations, from a safety perspective, hard braking, and this is actionable stuff, right? And it leads to the overall metric, which is less accidents,
Mhm.
and ultimately less insurance costs, less expenses, you know.
Sure.
So those are just some examples, but I think the important distinction is between the leading and lagging metrics, and really taking those actionable leading metrics and using those to drive the results amongst your team.
Exactly. And in the lagging metrics, while they are in the past, they can they can tell you a lot about yourself.
Hmm.
Things you've done really well that you want to repeat, things that you've really struggled with, and identify some gaps and trends that you want to, create new processes to address, or even adopt new technology to address. I know that's kind of how it works for me as a fleet manager. One big trend that we see a lot in the industry is fuel consumption as a result of idling, right? And something that is cultural and hard to change. Some people are like, hey, it's too hot or it's too cold, and I work outside, or and so there's a lot of things that we had to do to socialize the importance of sustainability. When our fleet was driving 250 million miles a year. So it was like, okay, what can we do? We got to drive most of these miles, but what can we do to reduce our carbon footprint? And to get people excited about that was tough. But I
Hmm.
love how tools and technology and data, when done well, can really drive positive results, but also get our employees or our partners excited about what they do every day. That's
Hmm.
the tough nut to crack, I think, is that communication strategy. So when I think about that, I love hearing sort of lessons from the field, you know, type of stuff, stories. Um, but when, you clearly have built a winning team culture. I know that's true. At IntelliShift, we know that about Windy City. But, there's just things that we'll never see that you do that has built this team culture in really in skilled trades, which is different than doing it in other businesses, right? It's very
Yes, it
different. So
is. Yes, it is.
talk about some of your secret sauce in building this winning team culture in skilled trades. Not an easy task.
Not an easy task. You're
And it's a
absolutely right.
journey, right? I'm sure it's a journey.
It's absolutely a journey, or as Simon Sinek would say, it's an infinite game, right? And you're absolutely right. And thank you for calling that out, Aaron. That it is a little bit different in these blue collar skilled trades than in the typical white collar communities that you hear about. When it comes to culture. And so, you hear things and you read things, right, in books about culture, about mission, vision, values, all
All the
this kind of
things.
stuff. And you've in these industries, I will tell you that the people that make up the blue collar skilled trades, they're salt of the earth people, right? They are so down to earth. They are so transparent and candid, right? If something doesn't smell right, they're going to call it out, right? Or they're going to leave. And
Yes,
so you can't
unfortunately.
just yeah, you can't just slap a poster up on the wall saying, "Hey, we're gonna be grateful. We're gonna tell the truth. We're gonna, we're gonna work hard. We're gonna and we're gonna take care of the customer," because that means nothing,
It's
right?
a buzzword, right?
It's a
Unless you do
buzzword.
something. Right.
That's absolutely right. It's pay to play. It's canned. Choose your analogy, but people see right through that, right through
Hmm.
that. So I guess the first thing that I would say is be genuine about the culture that you're creating with the values, and even if that means it's not the same values that Coca-Cola uses or that Zappos uses or that Amazon uses, be you, right? My values they match my personal values. Windy City values match my personal values, and because it's an extension of who I am, right? This business is a reflection of me, and we all need to have that mindset moving forward. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard for everybody to row in the same direction.
Yeah.
So you've got to be transparent. And listen, you know, I've seen and I've helped and I've worked with companies that their values are so atypical. It's almost scary, right? Like there was one company that I worked with that like they were super weirdly proud about how their entire team was passive aggressive, right? And like yeah, no, it sounds weird. It's okay. Just bear with me. It sounds
Yeah.
weird, but
Does.
like they're still in service of the customer, right? They're still in service of what they're doing, but just with each other. That's just their MO. Well, they built a team around this. Like and for better or worse, everybody in that was part of the culture,
Right.
right? And so it truly is about being transparent and building an organization that all shares those same values. And so I'm sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole. Where I was
No,
going
it's
with
okay.
this is that you need to ingrain that by hiring, firing, and rewarding based on the values that you want to see. And
Yeah.
that's how you get the organization to shift in the direction of, being able to actually row together. And this is not easy. This is not an easy practice, especially since most of us don't start with mission, vision, values, right?
Hmm.
Most of us start as a technician fixing equipment for somebody. Now we have a business. We bring on one employee, two employees, three employees. Finally, we have 10 team members, 20 team members, and no values. So when you implement these, you may find out really quickly that some of the most profitable people on your team do not exhibit the values that you want to be exhibited in your
Hmm.
organization, and then you have to make the hard decision, right?
Yeah.
You have to course
So,
correct, or you've got to remove.
mhm.
And that's just speaking transparently. Again, I'm a product of the blue collar skilled trade, so I'm going to tell you how it is, Aaron, and that's exactly how it is. And sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, make the hard decision, and move on. And every single time, 100% of the time, you'll be happy that you did. The second thing, if I could talk real quick about the second thing about building culture,
Please. It's my favorite
is
topic.
Yeah, no, and you know what? Mine too, because it's so challenging,
Oh,
right?
it's
And
hard, but it's
it
possible.
it really is. It definitely is possible. It is difficult. That's why a million books have been written on the topic, and all of them say something different. But
Hmm.
one thing that I found that is a common ground that helps everybody come together is personal development, right? Especially if you're in a company that values growth. If you're building a culture that's based on growth, the people in it naturally want to grow. So when you provide them the materials to do that, when you are willing as a leader to coach them through that, then you've got a team member for life. And I've seen this across multiple organizations, including my own. This is one of the reasons why we started Blues the New Ed Academy, right? Which focuses on this type of personal development, soft skills, leadership, communication, initiative, conflict resolution.
Some of that stuff that just doesn't come naturally to everyone.
Exactly, especially those in the skilled trades.
Hmm.
Because
Yep.
here's what happens, Aaron, and this is one of the challenges that we've seen, is that the people in these industries are wildly talented and incredibly intelligent. However, some of them can have a very low self-image because they grew up thinking that they were pushed in this direction because they weren't smart enough to go to college, right? And so and we see this narrative everywhere, right? But
Oh, it
you
is.
know,
It's changing though.
it
Just
is changing. It's
amazing.
absolutely changing, and that's why this type of development is so important, right? To help these individuals understand that what they do is valuable, and they can be leaders inside their organization because at the end of the day, it's all about influence, right?
It
It's just a
is.
question of what direction you're influencing those around you. And if you don't have that guiding compass, then, how are you supposed to know in what direction you're leading anyone? So anyway, and then again, how to tie that all the way back to, what's in it for you? How can that control your success? Because
Mhm.
it can.
Yeah. And then just this idea of, like, I know when I was leading my small and incredibly mighty team, um, with a massive fleet, not enough of us in in the fleet department. It was for me, I learned quickly it was just about empowering my people, making space or making a departmental culture, even if it wasn't the greater culture of the organization. I learned quickly that I had to create a space for them to feel empowered enough to assert themselves, insert themselves in the space they're working in and outside the space they're working in. We had our own mission and vision for our fleet department, and it was all based around safety, of course, and efficiency, and eventually sustainability, and getting our heads wrapped around how we could influence that. But for my team to get on board with that, I just had to just uh, give them room, give them space, right? And let them empower them to learn and grow. And I always said that their development is on them. I'm going to make it all possible, but they have to want it. And that's how you see those leaders sort of rise out of your workforce, is those who say, okay, Josh, you're making this available for me, and actually I'm going to take advantage of it. And
Yeah.
then those are those natural leaders. They never knew they were, um, you know, until
Incredible
you give them
insight.
the wings, right?
Absolutely. And I think that it's important to note too, this also comes with creating an environment where it's okay for people to fail, right? Which I think is a struggle for some leaders, entrepreneurs turned, CEOs, uh, because there's an expectation and there's almost an identity that you've created as you've built the organization that, you need to control everything. But in the spirit of ownership, you're absolutely right. That's what helps people develop, and they need to understand that if they fail at something, it's not going to be the end of the world to them, right? It's a
Right.
learning experience, and that's one thing we preach across our team too, is failure is not an end point, it's a data point, like we talked about before.
Oh, yeah, I love that. It's always a learning. It's like I feel like that entrepreneurial spirit is like born out of failure, isn't it? I mean, isn't
Absolutely.
that
Yeah,
the
Michael
way that
Jordan
it
said, "I
is?
failed 1,000 times, and that's why I succeed."
I love it. Another thing that I think about, we talked about so much about how we can empower our people, but we have to change. Things have to change, right? You have to implement change, new tools, new technology, new ways of doing business, because you have to be stronger, faster, smarter than your competitor to be successful. But you always want to do that the right way. So adapting to change faster. Okay, that's tough. So it's the mindset shift that everybody needs to know and understand. So talk about that. I know that's something that you've had to do and adapt to is change yourself with your organization and its growth, the change in the culture, the new tools and technology. So talk a little bit about that mindset shift in adapting to change. And I want to say adapting to change faster, because it's
Yeah,
adapting to change is one thing, but doing it faster is different. So talk about that a little bit.
I love your question, Aaron. I really love them. I actually, so I do keynotes around the country, and this is one of the topics I talk about. One of my common keynotes that I do is called "Adapt or Die: The Evolution of Change,"
Okay,
and
I've got to hear that.
it's a good one,
I hear it.
and it speaks exactly to this. And so, a couple of things that I'll say is, number one, speed is the currency of business. Okay, so when we talk about what propels businesses forward, especially small companies, because they're agile and they have the ability to move quickly,
Mhm.
it's speed. And the same is true whenever you're adapting to anything. There's that Stoic saying, I don't remember if it was Socrates or Seneca, that said the only constant is change,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
And it nothing is more true than that, because every single, listen, I live my life by a very specific philosophy. It's, what if this moment only exists to get me to the next one? And every moment of my life, right? And the same is true in business. We have to be willing to accept what's to come, even if it's not what we expect.
Hmm.
And that, at the end of the day, is the whole premise around adapting and changing, because there's nothing more dangerous than somebody saying, well, this is going to work because this is the way we've always done it, right? Tell that to
Famous last
ChatGPT.
words, really.
Exactly.
I love that. I think the struggle that, I work with our customers, like I mentioned a lot, and on change management. And it is so tough. And I always talk about the fact that, we need these tools, we need the technology, we need the data, we need all these things to be successful. But every time I hear someone say, when they're talking about change management, they're like, well, safety is a priority. It's a priority. Well, I heard from someone really smart who's on my podcast recently say that priorities change. So safety can never be a priority. It has to be a value, and you talked about, values driving consistency in your business. So, I'd love to hear more about that. We can talk. I do want to talk more about your academy as well, because I think that this idea of making a space for people to learn and grow is really critical. But before we do that, talk a little bit about the values that sort of drive you and in your business, which you said are intertwined. So I'd love to hear more about your values.
Yeah, no, I again, I appreciate the question. So this is a value we recently added. I'll get to the other values in a minute, but we added this one to provide balance, and this is something that I truly try to live by every single day, and it's enjoy the journey. Right? We've got our values about ownership, about relentlessly communicating, right? About
Love that one.
acting as one team, right? Moving forward, not only with ourselves but with our customers and our vendors, and changing the standard. Something I hold dear as well. Endlessly improving, right? This is something that I
Great.
strive for every day. If I panned left here, you would see all my self help books, my business books, and But that enjoy the journey is really what kind of brings it all down to the ground and allows us to remember that we are playing an infinite game, right? And that the point of life might not be whatever goal we want to achieve, but how we chose to go about achieving it. And it's a difficult mindset, I think, to transfer into an entire team. But if you can, it's incredible. And there's also another acronym that that's kind of near and dear to my heart. It's the premise of the new podcast, the rebrand, right? So for those who don't know, the Everything They Don't Tell You podcast is brand new, but it's a spin-off of the podcast that we've had for the last 6 years, which is Blue is the New White. And we've been blessed to have 200 guests on the show. I've had a ton of knowledge, but what we've found is that there's so much to unpack, not only in the blue collar space, but for everybody out there coming up and as leaders or becoming leaders or executives, entrepreneurs, founders, and scaling and building a business is one thing, but becoming the person who can is something completely different, right? And if we're not careful, we can fall into a little bit of an identity crisis there. So the acronym is TRUTH, right? And it stands for time. How do you buy back your time? How does the business serve you? Because time is one commodity that you can always give, but never get back.
Oh yeah.
There's there's responsibility, which is the ownership aspect. You spoke to it as well. You are responsible. You're a result of your past thoughts and actions, and you're responsible for whatever direction you want to take it or whatever you want to do. You is understanding, right? You have to go through life with a certain curiosity and make sure that you're not jumping to conclusions and you're understanding, what's going on. Empathy is involved in this too. It's all wrapped up into this, right? The second T is tenacity, right? If you want something, you got to go get it. You have to do the work. You've got to dig your heels in, and no one's going to come help you. Everyone is there to help you if you so choose, but ultimately it's up to you. You've got to take the steps to do it. And then finally, the balance with the H is humility, right? You've got to understand that you don't know everything. You will never know everything. And no matter what it is that you do or who it is that you are, there's always somebody you can learn from. And so, that helps keep that ego at bay. And I found that, with that, not only can you create an incredible podcast and use that as a framework to talk to some really great people all over the world that can give the best advice, but, if you truly live by that, then every day is an adventure and every day holds something new for you to learn, to do, to grow. And it's all part of enjoying the journey.
Man, I'm excited for the rebrand, the new podcast. If there are people listening today that haven't learned something about this idea of, we talked about modernized leadership, if people listening haven't heard messages that can point them in a direction of modern leadership for the blue collar industry or any industry, then they weren't listening. Talking about communication, technology, data, adapting to change. It's all boils down to, wow, if you do these things, I wanted to get to retention strategies, but we're running out of time. But gosh, all those things are key ingredients to retaining the people you have. And then, I grew up in a blue collar environment. My dad was a master electrician, and people came to work for him because they liked him. And then his people told other people, hey, you want to come to work for Dan. So word of mouth in this industry is critical. So, it's not just about retaining the people you have. It's about them going out and talking positively about their work experience and their work life experience. And all of a sudden now you're not dealing with the shortages that everybody else is. in
Yeah.
this environment, right?
Can I say one thing on retention? And I've got
Please.
time too, by the way, if you've got time. This is the last meeting of the day, so I'm good if you're good.
Me too.
But but
Yes.
one of the things I challenge people on, especially when I give my talks and speeches and stuff, I ask the audience, I poll the audience. I say, how many recruiters do you have on staff? Like, how many recruiters do you employ? So I'll ask you the question, Aaron, how many recruiters do you employ? Does your company employ? None? Okay,
No.
that's the answer I usually get. Maybe one,
Yeah.
maybe some people say one,
Yeah.
most people say none, and I'll say my next question is how many employees do you have? So how many employees does IntelliShift have?
About 150.
Okay, so you have 150 recruiters on your team.
There it is. I
And
love
this
it.
is important for anybody out there to understand because as you said, the best possible strategy for bringing on incredible talent into your organization, this is proven, Gallup did a whole study on this is proven, is having a culture, having a team that talks highly to other people about what they do, right? So those people want to be part of that organization. Everybody on your team is the best recruiter that you'll ever have.
Yeah, it's spot on. And I feel like every time I talk to customers about, how they're going to build safety culture, what I talk to them about is this idea of if you think that implementing tools and technology that's going to help save lives is going to make people leave, that's your fault because you're not talking about it the right way, right?
Yeah.
Building culture is about getting everybody on the same page and understanding that the vehicle is probably the most dangerous tool. I don't care what industry you're in. The vehicle is the most dangerous tool you'll ever hand somebody. And a lot of companies don't train people on how to, somebody came out of a Honda Accord and now they're in a cargo van or a work truck. It's a totally different environment, right? And so, the other piece of culture is not just getting everybody, beaten to the same tune or, riding in your taxi. It's all about them believing that you care about them getting home safely every day. Like they believe you when you say that. They believe that you care. And most businesses probably do. They just really suck at showing it, right? And that's the
Yes.
difference between a healthy culture and an unhealthy culture.
Hmm.
And when we talk about retention strategies, culture is the number one way to build retention, but it's also the number one way to attract new talent, right?
Yeah.
Um, Respect, I think some of the things that you've talked about is, you practice what you preach, right? And that shows
Mm-hmm.
people that you care and that you respect them. You talked about clear communication. When people believe you and they know what you're saying is true and you're being clear and concise with your communication, that's huge. But the collaboration piece, I mean, I love the fact that you guys are putting your champions um, out there and having them test the new stuff first and shooting all the holes in it because they're actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing it every single day. And I know that, you coming from a technician background has got to help too, right? Where
It
they've
does.
been, you've walked in their shoes. That's got to help build that collaboration too, I'm
It
guessing.
does. It absolutely does. I mean, there's an element of that I think that made it easier, but that's not to say that anyone who hasn't walked in those shoes can't do an impeccable job as well. And if anybody wants any like a little tip, this is something that worked for us, right? On not making safety feel like such a homework assignment, right? You know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
I do. I
And
do.
we have a badge that we've made, Christian made in our organization. It says protect your life, your family, and your business. And really what it does is it serves as a reminder that, if you come at this just from a business standpoint, you're going to get hurt. It's going to cost money. And,
You're dead in the
all that
water right there.
yeah, it's not going to land. And then even taking it a step further, because I know that a lot of us do this, and we say, okay, well, we're going to protect you. This is about you, right? That what's in it for me.
Hmm.
But take it one more step and remind people that you're protecting their family, right? Really paint a picture of what their family would do if they lost them, right? And come at it from that
Mm,
perspective. I'll tell you, Aaron, there's a big difference when I talk about the business, when I talk about the person, and when I talk about the family,
mm,
right? When I talk about the family, the eyes come up.
yeah.
And sometimes they get a little misty, but that's human nature, right? We associate memories with feelings. And
Hmm.
if you can invoke a feeling in your team that this is important crap, like this is really important, then you
Yeah.
have a better chance of them actually upholding those policies.
Yeah, I love it. Wow. I mean, the truth acronym, gosh, that can be applied in every area of business. Gosh, I think everything you shared today can. I hope that we're going to have a chance to talk more. At some point, I'm sure we will. Um, but I'd love to end with, if there's, I hate this question, but it's also a good question. It's like if there's one thing that a business owner or entrepreneur or a leader of people in the trades, if there's just one thing they could take away and do differently right now, not that it'd be not something, doesn't have to be something easy, but something that they could take away today, maybe that you learned the hard way, that you could share as like this sort of final tidbit about bringing people along. I mean, that's the most important thing in business is people. So, if there's one takeaway, not that they shouldn't have 100 from today's podcast, but one piece of advice or one key takeaway that they could do that would help them be better with their people, with their bread and butter, which is their people. What would that be?
It's a good question. So one of my favorite quotes from The Art of War, I'm going to butcher it because I don't know it word for word, but it's something like the best leaders are the ones who are able to influence 1,000 people, and those same people will say, "Look, we did it ourselves."
Oh, love that.
And and I think at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is it's not about you. It was never about you. You're not a leader because you are the most capable. You're not a leader because you are the smartest or you are the best or you are the strongest. None of that. You're a leader because you're able to put others first. And I think that's often forgotten, and not out of malice, right? But out of just human nature. It's our
Mhm.
it's in our nature to care, about ourselves. You walk past a mirror, what do you hide your face, or do you take a quick look? I mean, listen, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it can translate onto a much larger scale when you're running an organization and you're responsible for 50 families, 100 families, 1,000 families, you
Hmm.
know, and you've got to remember that, whatever story you're telling yourself about what it means for you to succeed, every single person that you're leading has the same story, not the same exact step-by-step story, but a story.
Hmm.
And so, your objective is to help each and every one of those people live that story
Yeah.
and leave something behind. So that's what
I love
that's what I
it.
would say. It's not easy, and I don't know how actionable it is, but I guess just remember that it's not about you.
Yeah. I mean, and I think if you think about it's not about you, then, we're back where we started at the beginning of this conversation, which is really about getting out there and understanding what it's like to do the work that, you're imposing on people with the business that you manage, run, whatever. So, Josh, gosh, I could talk to you all day. Definitely do this again. Um, but thanks for being with us and sharing your insights and your um, lots of great acronyms. I'm stealing all of them and try to implement them in my own life as a mom and as a professional, and all the other hats that we wear. But great insights. And so thank you for your time today. I super appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Aaron. This has been fantastic. Do you mind if I tell people where they can get a hold of me?
I'd love that. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm an open book. So you can find me on social media anywhere at Josh Zolin, just my first and last name, at Josh Zolin, all the major platforms. Windy City Equipment, WCecommercial.com, WCecommercial.com, really simple. And then the Academy, Blue is the New White Academy, is the acronym BITNW Academy, BITNW .academy. You can see everything there about personalized employee development for frontline workers in these industries.
Yeah, and it's just not something, I don't think there's enough of that. So I'm really excited to share that. And when we put this podcast out, we're going to, reshare how you guys can get a hold of Josh and, learn more from, more. There's more to learn. There really is. But fleet community, safety community, ops community, blue collar community, thank you for listening and being here. You guys know where to find Straight Talk on Fleet, just like Josh, anywhere you find your favorite content. I'd love to hear your feedback, what's working for you, what's not working for you, something that stood out from this podcast for you today. But definitely comment, like, subscribe wherever you find your favorite content. But like we like to say on Straight Talk on Fleet, until next time, keep it real, keep it safe for fleet's sake. So thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks again, Josh.